Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Jaci Russo tells William Vanderbloemen that she's a little surprised, given all of the uncertainty in the air, how well her marketing business is holding up. Marketing, as we all know, is often the first thing businesses pull back on. Jaci says her strong results may have something to do with the changes she's made in the way her agency closes sales. We also get Jaci and William's takes on the conversation we've been having about whether owners should consider their employees' personal circumstances when making HR decisions. But our main topic today is weightier than usual. William's wife and co-founder, Adrienne, recently received a cancer diagnosis and has begun treatment. Longtime listeners may recall that William has spoken in past episodes about his efforts to make sure the business can run without him. And oh my goodness, he tells us, how thankful I am that we started that process so long ago. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. In fact, that's the whole idea behind the 21 Hats community, engaging with other owners to get the kinds of insights only another owner can offer. If you're interested in learning more, step one is to sign up for a free trial of the Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners so you don't have to go looking for it. Step two is to get on our Slack channel, where you can ask questions, get vendor recommendations, and tap the wisdom of a very impressive crowd. Just search the 21 Hats Morning Report to subscribe. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Jaci Russo, CEO of Brand Russo, a marketing agency based in Lafayette, Louisiana, and William Vanderbloemen, CEO of Vanderbloemen Search Group, a Houston-based recruiting firm that works with churches and other faith-based organizations. The episode is titled, When There's an Illness in the Family. Welcome, Jaci and William. It's great to have you here. Jaci, I want to start with you. We've had a number of conversations here with owners who feel that the uncertainty coming out of Washington, D.C. has some people pulling back a bit, waiting to see what happens, reluctant to commit on big projects. When companies pull back like that, it's often marketing that they hold back on first, as I'm sure you're well aware. I'm wondering if you've seen any evidence of that.
Wait, Lauren, people cut marketing first? That's crazy. Yes, I have been preparing myself for that. I fully expected that this year we would see that. And really, I thought it was starting last year with people unsure about how the election would go, and then roll into now the election's happened and there's a lot of uncertainty because of not knowing tariffs. You know, we've heard Liz talk about that, et cetera. And so I've watched with trepidation and wonder and curiosity. And here we are, unlike after 9/11 or the financial crisis of '08 or the oil and gas energy crisis we've had 2 or 3 times in my area, which used to be predominantly oil and gas energy sector. And now here we are, and I'm not seeing that yet from my clients. So I'm not sure if it's because we're a little bit insulated in the B2B space. My clients make products and services that people need in their everyday lives for the businesses that they run. So that could be part of it. They're not a luxury item. I don't know if it's because people have finally appreciated what we've seen scientifically and historically. Every time there's a downturn, the companies that either stay the course or even up their marketing are able to gobble up market share. And so people have realized that that's true, and they're doing their best to stay the course. But we are seeing high levels of positivity. Now, I don't have any government contracts, and I only have one client that has government contracts. So that could be a big part of it.
That would help.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people individually who've been absolutely affected and laid off. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. So this is not to say that I am not sensitive to the plight of those who have been directly impacted. I am just shocked at this point, pleasantly surprised that so far so good. Knock wood. Please don't turn this into reality. Let it just be a hypothetical conversation.
You know, I'm a little surprised to hear that, Jaci, as well, in part because you've told us over the last couple of years, even in relatively good economic times, that you've had issues with some clients who keep saying they're about to sign on the dotted line with you and then don't quite pull the trigger. Is that still happening now, or are those people signing up?
Absolutely. We are starting to call that what we lovingly refer to as the mid-year doldrums. And because we saw it happen in 23 and 24, but through the end of 24 and now the beginning of 25, almost to the end of the first quarter of 25, we are not seeing that. Our closing rate is at 80% right now.
Wow.
Now, to say that though, we're doing some things differently. We aren't going to a proposal phase in the second step. We've moved that phase way down the line. We are still having our typical discovery. And out of that, we are now saying no to about 80 or 90% of the people that ask to meet with us. And so that is, you can just say I'm massaging the numbers, but at the end of the day, I only count as a yes or a no if they get a proposal. So they have something to say yes or no to. And by moving those proposals further down the line, we're increasing our close rate significantly. But what we are doing is better identifying who's a good client for us and moving them out of the process, giving them referrals, giving them other resources, providing other suggestions, but really saying this is the list of who's right for the agency. And if you're not right for the agency, we're not moving to proposal stage.
William, the last time you were here, you told us that your business was performing quite well in the new year. Are you spending money on marketing?
Everything we do is marketing.
Exactly.
Every email we send is marketing. How you address people, how you sign an email, it's all marketing. Is that right, Jaci?
That's correct. 100%.
Yeah. Marketing for us, Lauren, I think we started our friendship over a conversation about how blog posts are marketing. And most of our marketing is content-based. I guess where are my dollars going right now?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's not free. I mean, somebody has to write those blog posts, although I bet you're using AI a little bit these days.
Not as much as you'd think. Yeah, our salary dollars go toward, content that gets produced because everybody here produces content. I've got another book coming out in October, and we decided we're going to hire the same PR firm we used last time because they did such a good job, and frankly didn't think twice about it. We just baked it into the budget. And I'm trying to find some wood to knock on other than my head. But, there's an old joke that liquor and religion are both recession proof.
So you're planning on opening some liquor stores to go with?
Right. Maybe that's what I should do. It's like years ago when Unilever bought Ben & Jerry's and Slim Fast in the same week. Kind of self-perpetuating business.
I didn't know that.
Yes, pretty funny story. Anyway, we are spending. Normally, our business is lumpy. We don't sell 100,000 units of anything in a year. So 1 month of sales is nothing to get excited or depressed about. But now that we're midway through the quarter, we're still probably 30% year over year ahead. And I don't have any idea whether that's tied to politics. I mean, I know some people are uneasy. I know a lot of small business owners are very bullish because of what's going on in Washington. So I think it's a mixed bag.
For those, Jaci, who are seeing people get tentative and are struggling a little bit and wondering, is this a time to pull back or not? Do you have any advice for somebody who's having that debate? I mean, obviously, if there's no money there, you can't spend on marketing.
I wouldn't spend. That would not be the first thing I would do at all. To me, when you are tempted to pull back, when you see a plateau or a decline, even worse, I think the first thing you have to do is assess the situation. Give a real good look at what's working and not working. Why were you selling last year but not selling this year? What is your pivot? Is it your competition? Is it your audience has changed? Is it that you have changed or that you haven't changed? Something is triggering it. And so, I think about the client that we have with government contracts. They are understandably hesitant, to say the least, to do anything moving forward. I fully appreciate, although they haven't said this to me, but I fully appreciate their inclination is probably just to sit under the desk and hope nobody notices them for a little while. It's a scary time out there, and poking your head up out of the hole could maybe be disastrous. So the advice that we've given them is start to look at private opportunities. What's available to you in the public sector? What companies need your goods and services right now more than ever? And so replace that one big customer who accounted for 80% of your business, which let me assure you, their agency told them years ago that was not a good idea. And so now listen to the advice I gave you. And so it's not about spending money. It's about spending some time and some mental energy to say, where are my opportunities and how do I go get them?
Jaci, do you have anything else to share on, you said you made some changes that maybe has accounted for the higher close rate on your clients. Anything that would translate for others who are hoping to do the same?
Well, I mean, we started to realize that there was a definite bucket of people who weren't saying yes. They were kicking tires. They were using us to fill a quota. We need so many proposals to say we've got 3 or 5 or whatever their magic number is. And so we're just not playing that game anymore. So that's part of it. It's less time wasted on us. We used to have incredibly customized proposals. And then we got into a high volume of proposals. And so because of the quantity, we couldn't be as customized. We think that had a direct impact. So we've gone back to what we now feel is a really nice blend of some real targeted customization. You said these are your challenges, and this is how we want to solve that. And some really nice information around who we are, what we're about, and how we do it. So you kind of get best of both sides. We're able to move through the generating of the proposals still in a timely manner. They're not sucking a lot of time from the team, but they are more customized like they need to be, and that's working. Since that has happened, we've only heard one no. That's in 4 months, maybe 5 months.
Wow.
And then, like I said, if they don't meet every one of our criteria, and to be clear, I'm the one who always says, yeah, but they're close enough. The team is now 100% empowered to say, no, follow your own darn rules. What are you doing? And because they're calling me on my stuff, I'm paying more attention to it. And so it doesn't matter that they're my friend. It doesn't matter that they heard me speak at a conference and they keep telling me how great I am, because that's usually how people get to me, is flattery. It wins every time. It doesn't matter that I think they will be big enough to be one of our clients one day. All of those excuses that I used to make for people because I want to help. My team is holding me accountable, and we're doing a much better job of providing other resources that they can still leverage. So, that's our example. But, Lauren, we hadn't talked about this, but we have this space in our building that used to be occupied by our creative team. We built them a whole other really, really nice space. Like, it's the space they dreamed of. They got to be directly involved in it. It was a very collaborative endeavor. We spent a ton of money, and they are just as happy as can be in their new little nests. The old space, which is a big open room, whereas now they have walls, no doors, but they have a doorway. And so it accomplishes my desire to still have an open workplace and their desire to have quiet away from, me, I think. I mean, I'll say my team, but mostly me, because I do talk all day long. I mean, to be fair, and I project, and you can be all the way across the building and still clearly hear the interview that I'm doing or whatever. So they got away from me, which that's fine. My feelings were only a little bit hurt for a minute.
It's great for podcasts.
It is great for podcasts. So I sat for about a year really contemplating how are we going to use this space? What's going to be the best use? And the whole time, and I'm telling a little bit on myself about how I'm not the smartest sometimes, I get these calls because part of our remodel was building out the really nice meeting space that I use to teach classes and people rent. We call it the workshop, downtown workshop. And so it's used for events all the time. And I get calls a couple times a week from people saying, oh, I want to rent the workshop. In the conversation, I can quickly identify that they need a desk. They're not having an event. They need a small, inexpensive place to work. They don't want to go to a coffee shop anymore. They're trying to be in work from home and isolated, whatever it might be. And so I would give them a list of names. Hey, go call Kevin with Downtown Development or Destin Opportunity Machine or this organization, that organization. Somebody can help you. Well, those places all got filled up. So I reached out to people in the downtown area and said, y'all need to build this co-working space that everybody's asking for. So I'm going to admit it took me a year for the people asking for it, for me telling somebody else to do it, me realizing I have the space, I might as well be the one to do it. We are starting construction on Monday. We should be done in about 3 weeks because there's just a little bit that needs to happen, making some doorways, building out some things to better insulate them. And so now we're launching this. I made one comment on social media of, hey, we're going to have this thing soon. If you know anybody who's looking, I got a waiting list now.
Wow.
That's all from people who are starting businesses, who are leaving the safe job they've had and jumping into this market because they see opportunities. So that whole long story was just to say, there are people who still see optimism on the horizon and an opportunity to go take advantage of something. If I can go fill 20 desks, that tells me that people still see opportunity.
All right. I want to run a debate by both of you that has kind of broken out here on the podcast and also on the 21 Hats Slack channel. It started with a conversation we had with Paul Downs, who unfortunately has had to lay some people off. When Paul was on the podcast, he told us about that. And he told us that in deciding whom to lay off, he took into consideration some personal factors, like who had just put a down payment on a house, who just had a kid. And he did it in the context of, this is part of the reason why he's loved being a business owner. He really likes his employees. He really likes getting to know them and know them well. And it's hard not to take that into account at a time like this. We've also heard from people who've reacted strongly against that and said, this really should be a decision that comes down to what's best for the organization, in part because no owner can really have perfect vision of all the lives of their employees and really know what's going on. And if you get it wrong, you can forfeit some credibility in doing that. I'd love to hear what both of you think, especially William. This is kind of your business. You've been through layoffs yourself. What do you think of this debate?
Well, I think there are probably smart people on both sides of it, right?
Sure.
And I think they're probably compassionate people on both sides of it. Somewhat of a North Star for me came from a friend of mine who's also a client. His name's Dave Ramsey. He's a radio personality. He's the get rid of your credit cards, save your money. Most people would know the name.
Sure.
Anyway, sometime back, I was talking to him about, taking investor money or not, or what have you. And, we could probably scale up if I went and raised $10 or $20 million real fast. And he said, well, William, the whole point of making money for me is to have peace of mind. And if the way I'm making money robs me of my peace of mind, what's the point? That's stuck with me. And it has, I don't know that it lands me on one side or the other of this debate, but I think it's a great question for me to ask myself, and maybe it helps some listeners too. Is this decision going to give me peace of mind about how I'm making my money? And if it is not, then what's the point of making the money to begin with? So, for instance, for us, the only significant layoffs we had to do was when the lockdown happened in 2020. And it wasn't a convenient excuse to let go of people who were just barely getting by. We cut way past the bone. And I made a list of who I thought should go. My COO made a list of who he thought should go. Let's compare notes and we'll see. And somehow, providentially, I'd say, the lists were identical. And I don't think we took into account they just had a baby or they just bought a house. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't. I mean, unfortunately, we've had two employees who've one lost a spouse, one lost a child, both to the same kind of brain cancer. And I would have had a hard time letting one of those go during those seasons. But I don't know that people who would do it for the sake of the business itself are necessarily wrong. I guess I would just ask, what's the motivation? Is it save every penny you can because we're a business and that's the way it is? I guess it's a free country. You can do that. To me, it's what's going to give me the most peace of mind and have some compassion. And then the last thing I'd say is I grew up surrounded by attorneys. My brother's an attorney, my father's an attorney, everywhere you look. And I guess that's embedded in me a constant question about what precedent am I setting? And I think that, to me, that's the most dangerous part of the don't fire somebody who just bought a house. What's the precedent there? And what kind of risk are you setting yourself up for with a future employee? Texas is an at-will employer state, so it's not as big an issue. But those are the things that roll through my mind just off the cuff.
How about you, Jackie?
I agree with William, and he's always so eloquent that there are smart people on both sides of the issue. And I need to remind myself that I have to start every conversation with that, because that's a nice way to level set the rest of what's to follow. I would not want to take on, if I was in that position, the evaluation of who can mentally or financially afford a layoff and make a decision that way. Because then that means I'm always looking at it, in my opinion, too far from the employee's perspective and not enough from my job, which is the company's perspective. We don't have, I think, the same kind of redundancies that other companies might have. So if I'm having to make a layoff in the graphic design department, well, there's only so much of that. All of our departments we've got great capacity, but everybody does something different. And so I can't necessarily at this stage of our growth play that kind of evaluation of somebody's got to go. It can be any one of these 10 people. It's really job and performance specific. We have, I think, a really great team. Almost everybody's been here for at least a half a decade, if not more than a decade. And so I would be hard pressed because somebody's got something. They've all got a sick family member, a new spouse, a new kid, student debt, whatever it might be. I could only look at it from the perspective of what does the company need?
One of the issues that people brought up is comparing this situation to another one, which is paying people differently based on their personal lives. Do you pay somebody more because they're supporting a family, even though they're doing the same job as somebody who doesn't have a family? And I think that goes off in a different direction. I'm curious, do you guys see this as a comparable issue or very different?
I might be a bit of a curmudgeon on that. I don't pay people based on need. And we have a particularly difficult, nuanced situation in that many of our employees spent part or all of their career before coming to us working in nonprofits or churches where that is standard protocol. Oh my gosh, they have more needs, so we need to help them. Nonprofits pay like they're employing individual nonprofits, if that makes sense. So
interesting.
It's really stupid. So we've almost had to be, pardon me, but kind of a hard ass about that around here and just say, hey guys, we're helping schools, nonprofits, churches, that sort of thing, but we aren't one. And I say all the time, I really believe you can do good and practice good business at the same time, but that doesn't mean we're a nonprofit. So I might be a little more hardline on that one than the first part of the debate.
I'll just jump in real quick on that because I think I can approach it from a little bit of a different perspective. So for some context, I have heard often, and I imagine most people have, the statistic that women make 80% less than men. There's a lot of ways to interpret that statistic.
80% less?
I'm sorry, 80% of men, 20% less. Sorry, thank you for the correction, Lauren. Yeah, we're not working for 20 cents on the dollar. We're working for 80 cents on the dollar. And obviously there's some variables there with regards to persons of color and geography. And I've heard it's as low as 72 cents on the dollar, but I was going with 80 as a nice even round number. I'm assuming some of my girls have managed to get us up a little bit in the averages. So that statistic has stuck with me for a while. And I have heard lots of explanations and discussions around it. If we're looking at it over the course of an entire career, is it because some women leave the workforce to go have kids? Is it because of the kinds of jobs that some women have that are lower paying, some of the kinds of jobs men have? Lots of discussion and explanation around it. As it's on my mind, two things have come forward. One is inevitably, when I am interviewing men and when I am interviewing women, the men, almost every one of them, I can't think of one that hasn't, will very early in the process clearly state exactly what it is they need to make without question. Women, almost never bring it up in the interview process. And when I do, I'd like to make around this, but I could go lower if you need me to. And so it's as an employer, am I going to fight the good fight to help women get their average up? Or as an employer, am I going to get the best person for the job at the best rate? I have to balance both of my interests. So I read this article just the other day that said 1.2%. I'm going to round up to 1.5% just for ease. 1.5% of women-owned companies get to $1 million a year in revenue. That is startling to me.
Yeah.
Startling. And the article gave a lot of really good information around how women price their business when they are the decision maker. Like I'm thinking about when I started this company and how I priced myself. And just like I see women sitting in that interview seat, this article was talking about women entrepreneurs and the way they price things versus the way male entrepreneurs price them, how they value themselves, all of those kinds of things, right? And so, to all of our points here, it is a challenge when you're thinking about, who you're hiring, who you're laying off, how you're growing. All of this ties in because there are inclinations to not fire a guy because he's got a family to support. So does she, so it all factors in. So I think if I was to pick a side in this discussion, final wrap up, I would have to pick the side of you got to do what's best for the company and not take someone's personal into consideration because you don't know who they are or what's happening for them really when they leave that door at 5 o'clock.
I'm going to, at the risk of contradicting myself, I'm going to add one other thing, Lauren.
Oh, please do.
And it kind of does tie back to my friend Dave Ramsey. We've got a wonderful team member who's been with me a long time who doesn't do a very good job of managing her or his money. I'm going to leave it androgynous so we don't single anybody out. And I felt like maybe I'll give him a raise and that'll help him. And Dave pointed out to me, he said, William, you could double their salary. They're still going to be in debt. You can't solve people's spending habits. And just increasing their salary is going to do nothing but create more levers to pull for more debt. And I think that, I don't know if it hardened me or clarified things for me that, short of something catastrophic happening, I need to let people live their lives and manage. We did at that point insist that all new employees take the course Dave offers called Financial Peace University. What they do with it is up to them, but at least we've given them a vehicle for here's how you manage your money. We have a lot of young employees, and frankly, their parents a lot of times just didn't tell them how to save, how to have an emergency account, all the basics that most everybody listening already knows.
All right. The last thing I want to talk about today concerns you, William. I was so sorry to see that you recently posted on LinkedIn that your wife, Adrienne, has been diagnosed with cancer. It's been very recent. First of all, of course, how's she doing?
I don't know, Lauren. We haven't done this before.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound, like a smart ass. I genuinely don't know. We've been truly humbled by the number of people that have reached out and offered positive thoughts and prayers and the like. And, right now, while we're recording this, I'm supposed to be keynoting at a conference out of town. And a acquaintance of mine, we know each other a little bit through work, but we're not buddy, who is about my age and lost his wife to cancer a couple years ago, just called me out of the blue. He saw our post, and he runs a big research institute. And he said, "Can I give you unsolicited advice?" I said, "Sure." He said, "If I could do anything over again, the time I had before we started the really hard treatment, I would have canceled everything. I would not have left town once." And you didn't ask for this advice, but he was actually the other keynoter at the conference today. He said, "Send me your notes. I'll give your talk if you want." And things like that have just not that I've lost faith in humanity or anything, but boy, it sure shores up your outlook on humans when things get real.
You apparently made a deliberate decision to talk about this fairly openly, posting on LinkedIn and offering to go ahead and do this podcast as well. Tell me about your thinking with that.
Well, I've had a little time to think on this, so I hope this doesn't sound polished. But my first concern is Adrienne.
Of course.
And I don't really care about much else. So, when we got the news, which was totally out of the blue, I mean, she was actually doing some preventive maintenance to try and figure out how to deal with recurring chest colds without using antibiotics. And she went and got a CAT scan of her lungs, which was completely clear. But they said, but you do have something funny going on in your abdomen, and no family history, no nothing. So stunning news. And none of the, behavioral things that she didn't smoke, she didn't rarely drinks. I mean, all the things that, So out of the blue, the first thing we were like, well, we're going to have to talk to the kids. And then we've got to decide whether we're going to be private about this or not. And Adrienne said, well, my desire would be to have as many people as possible praying. So I don't want to, make everything that I write or produce sound like we're talking about her cancer. But she said, just tell everybody. I'll use every prayer I can get. I think that we're in MD Anderson, which is, you'd have Sloan Kettering up near you, but MD Anderson's usually ranked 1 or 2 in the world in cancer, and it's about 2.5 miles from our house. We're with the best doctor for this particular kind of thing in the whole world.
That's encouraging.
But I think even with all of that, it will take more than just medicine. So she said, just tell everybody. And we don't want to make a Debbie Downer to end the podcast at all. We're positive and hopeful, but sure do appreciate you asking. I decided, we do a lot of succession planning as a business for other clients. And it made me years ago say, I need to be a little less relevant every year around here so that the thing can live after me. And oh my goodness, how thankful I am that we started that process so long ago. And, I can't just take off forever, but I've been able to pretty well shut down for the last 2.5 weeks and just focus on being at home, and it hadn't hurt the business.
You have talked about that here a good bit. I think the example you've given most often is how you've expanded your summer vacation time away from the business very deliberately to give it a chance to run without you. This is a little bit different, obviously, but that's what you're referring to, I assume.
It is. And I mean, my ego would like to think we would grow faster if I were more involved. But thankfully, it's been quite manageable right now. And the whole company is still on the adrenaline rush of just hearing the news and everybody rushing to help. I mean, I think I'm going to have to go buy another freezer for our house for all the food people brought by. It's amazing. And when that dies down and we get into a rhythm of treatment and such, we probably ought to revisit on the podcast how I'm trying to manage work-life balance and that sort of thing. But for now, everybody's kind of amped up and rallying and going the extra mile to try and help Adrienne, which is really humbling.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Adrienne, who is lovely and delightful. She's also been an important part of the business. Your co-founder, I believe, CFO at some point.
Yep.
Has she been active in the business recently?
No. Well, yes and no. Not in the day-to-day. She watches the finances like a CFO, but we have a director of finance. The more important thing is, if we joke all the time, and she says, if I were the only one running the business, we would never make a sale. If William were the only one running the business, we wouldn't have a penny in the bank. So I don't make any big decisions without consulting with her, and it's her involvement in the business is long walks with the dogs in the morning and talking through what's happening and offering counsel that I don't see. I tell people she's just almost perfect in every way, except for a blind spot when it comes to her taste in men.
William, just to jump in real quick, I too was so sorry to hear the news. And I obviously am praying for both of you every day.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Well, you're welcome. I respect your approach. Also working with my spouse, I have always described me as all gas and him as all brake, and together we make the car go. So I think it's a very similar relationship. And I know how vital we both are, not just to each other and to our kids, but to our company. And so I can't imagine running this place without him.
Jaci, have you taken any steps, done any of the thinking that William obviously did to kind of prepare the company for a period when you might not be available?
I've done all the thinking. I am almost completely replaced here. I have really kind of two small things that I still do that could be handed over at any time, but I got to have something. I have to have a reason to be in the building because I believe that I have to be replaceable because I know I'm not going to be inside this building forever and ever. And so absolutely, we can't grow if I'm still holding tasks. Now, somebody needs to go have that conversation with Mr. Russo because we had our annual board meeting last year. It's just the two of us. So it's also a vacation. But we went to Michigan. We did the Entrepreneur in Residence retreat at the Edward Lowe Foundation. And we spent 3 days quietly and then sometimes loudly discussing both of our future plans, 5, 10, 15 years. And we came to some understandings that at some point I will no longer be the daily runner of this company. And he has to be okay with letting me ascend to a different role. Think of it as like a chairman, maybe. And at the same time, I highly encourage him to find ways to replace himself. He needs to be the creative director, not the creative doer. And so he's working on it. He's honestly, truly now for a time actually working on it. For a while, like about 10 years, he just told me he was going to work on it. But it's going to be really hard for him to let go to the degree that I have.
William, is there anything, I know this is all very recent. Is there anything you've already realized that you didn't think of that you would have liked to have prepared for?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question, Lauren. Let me think on that.
Sure.
I mean,
it's early for that question.
We've been so fortunate. I mean, so fortunate that financially we can pay the bills. I sit and look at when we're down at MD Anderson, which is, they call it here in Houston, the best place you never want to visit. And I look at older couples, older people who are alone, who don't even know how to really work an iPhone and don't know how to, everything is through apps now at hospitals. And we've just been so fortunate and have so much health about us that what do we do to prepare more? I probably would have spent more time with Adrienne, in earlier years. I probably wouldn't have traveled as much.
I'm also curious, you have your background as a pastor. I assume you've had countless conversations with other people going through similar situations.
Oh, yeah.
Has that been helpful to you?
I think it's revealed to me what an idiot I was when I was trying to be a pastor.
Why do you say that?
People say the stupidest stuff. I mean, for instance, if you'll indulge me for a minute, a dear friend send us a screenshot of the verse of the day that they were reading, in their devotional or whatever. And it's a line where Paul is writing, and Paul says, God spoke and said, my grace is sufficient for you. And it's a fairly quoted verse among churches and things like, my grace is going to be sufficient for you. Oh, what a nice verse. Well, the problem with sending me a verse is I've actually read the whole Bible quite a few times. The context, this is how dumb I was as a pastor. I probably did the same thing. The context is, if you read just before that line, Paul says, 3 times I asked God to remove a thorn from my flesh, or you could say tumor from my liver. And he said, no, my grace is sufficient for you.
Oh, ouch.
I think I just said the stupidest things. I think what I'm learning through this is I should have talked less. It's interesting if you go to the Jewish or Christian scriptures to the book of Job, he goes through hell and his friends show up, and they get a lot of things wrong. But the one thing they got right, it says that his friends showed up for him, and they sat with him for 7 days, and they didn't say a word. And I think I've had to sit with a lot of families that have gotten bad news, and I probably tried to offer platitudes too quickly. Life's messy and fragile. The other thing I'll say on a very positive note is, it's been, 16 years since I did any form of active pastoral ministry, really 18 since it was full time. And when I sat with people that had been through chemo and radiation and all these things, it was like, let's cut off as much as we can and microwave the person and zap them. Treatment has come light years since that, 20 years ago. And new things are coming out like daily. So on the positive side, I'm so rusty as a pastor that I didn't realize it's a lot brighter outlook than it was 20 years ago.
That is great to hear. And I think a really good note to end this conversation on. Again, William, obviously not the easiest of topics, but you managed to actually make us laugh a little bit. And I think that's probably the pastor training to some extent.
Yeah, how is it that I'm the one that got teary and choked up and William is calm, cool, and collected?
Oh, I'm Dutch.
You're in your right position, too.
All right. My thanks to Jaci Russo and especially William Vanderbloemen. You guys are always generous about sharing your experiences, but especially this week, and I know we all appreciate it.
Thanks, Lauren.
One thing before you go. Everything we do at 21 Hats is created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to help us all learn together. If you get something out of listening to these podcast episodes, consider joining the conversation. You can do that by joining the 21 Hats Sounding Board, a Slack channel where you can tap the wisdom of a very smart crowd, or by becoming a founding member and joining our monthly Zoom forum, where you can be part of conversations much like the ones we have on the podcast. You can sign up for both by subscribing to the Morning Report. If you have any questions, you can email me at lauren@21hats.com. And if you get something out of this podcast or out of the Morning Report, please tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell every business owner you know. Your word of mouth, owner to owner, will always be the most effective way to build this community for all of us. Thank you. It means a lot. This episode was produced by another entrepreneur, Jess Stuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Thanks for listening, everyone.